The silence of space was deceptive. It gave the illusion of peace, of stillness. But war did not care for illusions. War thrived in the void, in the cold, airless expanse where no screams could be heard. The Zyvar Dominion struck without warning. They did not come with emissaries or declarations. They came with fire. Their warships, sleek, dark constructs of destruction, descended upon Mars with the precision of an executioner's blade. Orbital defense platforms burned, their metal husks drifting in pieces across the crimson sky. Cities that had taken generations to build were reduced to glowing embers in mere hours. The death toll climbed into the millions before Earth could even comprehend the scale of the attack. The United Earth Federation, UEF, had expanded far beyond its home planet, stretching its influence to the moons of Jupiter and the frozen reaches of Titan. Yet, for all their advancements, humans were still considered a young race among the interstellar community. The Zyvar had been watching, waiting. And now, they had made their move. Inside the war room of UEF High Command, tension coiled like a living thing. Holographic projections of Mars flickered in a dim chamber, showing destruction in real time. Fires raged across the Martian surface, black smoke curling into the thin atmosphere. Bodies, civilians, soldiers, scientists floated lifelessly in shattered domes. General Alexander Kane stood at the head of the table, hands clasped behind his back. He was a man carved from war, his presence as imposing as the storm brewing outside the station's reinforced windows. His voice, when he spoke, was like steel grinding against stone. "They hit us without provocation," he said. "Without warning. And now they expect us to bow." Ambassador Elangris, Earth's chief diplomat, sat opposite him, her expression unreadable. "The Zyvar have sent a communique," she said. "They claim Mars was an unfortunate necessity. That our presence in this sector is unsanctioned." "Unfortunate necessity?" Kane's voice was a low growl. "They massacred millions, verse." She nodded, exhaling slowly. "And yet, they have offered us terms." She gestured to the screen behind her. A translated message appeared in bold red text. "Humans, submit to the Dominion. Accept our rule. Or perish like your Martian brethren. You have one cycle to decide." A sharp silence followed. Around the table, officers exchanged uneasy glances. A single cycle, 24 hours. That was the Zyvar's generosity. Kane's fists clenched. "And if we refuse?" Verse met his gaze. "Then Mars will not be the last to burn." For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of those words pressed against them all. They had known war before, against themselves, against the unforgiving void. But this was different. This was an enemy that did not see them as equals. The Zyvar did not negotiate. They conquered. Finally, Admiral Rains, head of the UEF Navy, cleared his throat. "We have fleets positioned near the outer colonies. If we move now, we can." Novers cut him off. A military response now would be suicide. The Zyvar are stronger, their technology more advanced. "We need time." Kane's jaw tightened. "We don't have time." "We do if we give them what they want," Verse said carefully. Kane turned sharply to her. "You're suggesting we surrender?" "I'm suggesting we make them believe we might." A murmur swept through the room. Verse leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "The Zyvar see us as weak. That is our advantage. If we play this carefully, we can buy time to gather our forces, to strike where they least expect." Kane exhaled slowly, considering. It was a dangerous gamble. But so was war. Verse continued, we send a response. We tell them we are considering their terms, that we require more time to convene our leaders. They'll see through it, Reigns muttered. Verse shook her head. They won't. They believe they've already won. Kane nodded slowly. And that's their mistake. A plan began to form. A desperate one. But desperation had won wars before. Kane turned to his officers. Prepare the fleets. Quietly. If the Zyvar want to see humanity bow, he exhaled sharply. Then we'll let them believe it. Just long enough to drive a knife into their throat. As the decision was made, somewhere beyond the orbit of Jupiter, a Zyvar battleship drifted silently, listening. Watching. The war had begun. General Alexander Kane had long accepted that peace was an illusion. It was a fleeting moment between wars, a fragile mirage before the storm. He had fought in battles before, had watched men and women die under his command. But this war would define the future of humanity itself. The chamber of the United Earth Federation High Council was filled with voices clashing like steel on steel. Holographic projections of burning Martian colonies hovered above the long table, flickering images of devastation. The air was thick with the weight of impossible decisions. The Zyvar have given us a choice, Ambassador Elaine Vers said, her voice calm but firm. Surrender and survive. Resist and be annihilated. Kane's fists clenched at his sides. There is no choice, he said coldly. We fight. President Nathaniel Hurst, the elected leader of Earth and its colonies, leaned forward. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes held a fire that had not yet dimmed. You don't understand the scale of what we're facing, General. The Zyvar wiped out Mars in a matter of hours. We don't have the firepower to match them. We don't need to match them, Kane countered. We need to outthink them. Across the room, a senator from the European Union scoffed. And what? Engage in some kind of guerrilla warfare? Against an empire that has conquered a dozen star systems. Kane stepped forward, placing his hands on the table. Guerrilla warfare is how weak nations have defeated stronger ones for centuries. We are not going to outgun them, but we will make this war cost them more than they are willing to pay. Silence fell over the room. The idea of resistance was appealing to some, terrifying to others. Vers, ever the diplomat, folded her hands together. The question is not just if we can fight. It's if we can win. Before Kane could respond, a red light flashed on the console in front of them. The room's AI spoke in a crisp monotone. Priority 1 alert, unidentified vessels detected near Luna Defense Command. The chamber froze. Kane turned sharply. Put it on screen. The holographic map of the solar system shifted. Near the orbit of the moon, a fleet of Zyvar warships had broken through the outer defensive grid. Energy signatures flared missile impacts, plasma discharges. Luna Defense Command was under attack. Admiral Reigns swore under his breath. They are testing our response time. Seeing how quickly we can react. Kane's mind worked fast. If the Zyvar were probing their defenses, they weren't committing their full strength. Not yet. This was an opportunity. How many ships can we scramble? Reigns hesitated. The Third Fleet is closest, but they are not at full combat readiness. Then we move with what we have, Kane ordered. Send the fleet. And tell them to hit hard. Vers looked at him. A full military engagement this early could escalate. It's already escalated, Kane cut her off. They think we're weak. If we hesitate, we prove them right. Minutes later, across the vast distance of space, the engines of the Third Fleet roared to life. Destroyers, cruisers, and battle carriers surged forward, racing toward the embattled lunar base. Kane stood in the control room, watching the battle unfold in real time. The Zyvar were fast, their ships moving with an almost organic fluidity. But humans had something else: adaptability, unpredictability. As the fleets clashed, Kane saw the first real test of human resistance. The Zyvar had the advantage in firepower, but the UEF had learned. They struck from angles the Zyvar didn't expect, exploiting every gap, every hesitation. When the battle was over, Luna still stood. Battered, but standing. Kane exhaled slowly. It was a victory. A small one. But it was proof that humanity could fight back. That they would fight back. As he turned away from the display, he knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. The Black Phantom team moved like shadows through the abandoned corridors of the Zyvar outpost. The air was thin, the metallic scent of alien machinery filling their helmets. Captain Elias Vance signaled his squad to hold position. His breathing was steady, his hands firm on the grip of his pulse rifle. They had trained for missions like this: deep infiltration, high-risk extraction. But nothing had prepared them for what they were about to uncover. The outpost was supposed to be a logistics hub, but what they found was something far worse. A central chamber, walls lined with holographic displays, each one flashing with streams of unreadable Zyvar script. But one image stood out: a projection of Earth, surrounded by alien tactical markers. Vance's HUD translated the symbols. Undefended target, extermination protocol active, humanity, non-sentient species. Vance felt a cold weight settle in his gut. He activated his comms. Command, we have a problem. The Zyvar don't see us as an enemy. They see us as prey. General Alexander Kane listened to the report in silence. He stood at the center of UEF High Command, surrounded by officers and strategists. The words echoed in his mind. Prey. Not even a species worth negotiating with. No peace talks. No treaties. Just extermination. The revelation burned away any last vestige of doubt. He turned to his officers. This war was never about conquest. It was never about politics. The Zyvar never intended to give us a choice. Admiral Rains frowned. So what do? We don't have the numbers to fight them in open battle. Kane's eyes darkened. Then we stopped playing by their rules. For years, Earth had adhered to the Galactic Concords, treaties that limited the development of superweapons. The Zyvar had assumed humanity was bound by those restrictions. They were wrong. In the depths of black site research facilities, away from the prying eyes of the intergalactic community, Earth had built weapons unlike anything the Zyvar had ever faced. Weapons that had never been used until now. Kane pulled up classified schematics. Project Ragnarok. A weapons platform hidden in the asteroid belt. Equipped with experimental mass drivers and directed energy cannons. It was deemed too dangerous for conventional warfare. Verse paled. Activating it would violate every treaty we've signed. The Galactic Council. The Galactic Council is not coming to save us, Kane cut her off. The Zyvar thought we were weak because we played by the rules. They thought we were just animals that learned to use tools. He turned to the officers in the room, his voice like steel. They think we are just talking apes. Let's show them what made us kings of this planet. Orders were given. Silent alarms rippled through hidden bases across the solar system. Deep within secured vaults, weapons long thought to be myths were prepared for deployment. Humanity's first move was no longer one of defense. It was war. The battle for Mars began with fire. From the moment the UEF fleet entered orbit, the Zyvar warships descended upon them like predators striking helpless prey. Earth's ships, though formidable in their own right, were outclassed. Zyvar vessels moved with eerie precision, their energy lances slicing through human hulls like molten knives through flesh. Explosions bloomed across the void, scattering debris and vaporized bodies into the endless dark. Admiral Rains gritted his teeth as his flagship, the Indomitable, shuddered under another direct hit. "Damn it!" he roared. "Pull the flanks back, get some distance." The bridge was a cacophony of alarms and shouted commands. Tactical readouts showed the grim reality: the UEF fleet was losing ships too fast. Their railguns and missile barges were effective but lacked the sheer energy output of the Zyvar plasma weaponry. One after another, human vessels were being torn apart. A transmission flickered onto the main screen. A Zyvar commander, standing tall in his bone-like armor, regarded them with what could only be described as contempt. His voice, distorted through the translator, carried an almost mocking tone. "Do not resist. You are nothing but dust between the stars. Your struggle is meaningless." Rains clenched his fists. "Cut that damn transmission. Get me ground command now." Far below, on the rust-colored plains of Mars, UEF ground forces lay in wait. The initial bombardment had devastated the colonies, but beneath the shattered domes and ruined infrastructure, humanity had prepared. Bunkers and underground tunnels concealed their true numbers. Advanced stealth tech masked their presence. They were not an army standing in formation. They were hunters in the dark. Captain Adrian Cole, leading the 22nd Shock Battalion, watched as Zyvar landing craft touched down, spewing out their soldiers' tall, insectoid warriors clad in gleaming carapace armor. The aliens advanced with mechanical precision, scanning for resistance. Cole's voice was a whisper through the comms. "Wait for it." She tightened her grip on her pulse rifle, her finger hovering over the trigger. The Zyvar moved forward, their formations rigid, their protocols perfect for open warfare. But this was not open warfare. This was something else entirely. Cole smiled grimly. Now, hell erupted. Human soldiers struck from the ruins, emerging like wraiths from the dust. Cloaked in active camouflage, they were ghosts, invisible until the moment of impact. Sniper rounds punched through Zyvar helmets with lethal precision. Explosives turned their armored walkers into twisted wrecks. Units moved in coordinated, unpredictable strikes, attacking from angles no machine-driven tactic could anticipate. The Zyvar commander on the ground stumbled back as his forces fell into disarray. This was not how humans were supposed to fight. They did not march into battle. They did not follow the conventional rules of war. A lieutenant turned to him, his mandibles clicking in what could only be fear. "They do not fight like us. They hunt us like beasts." And in that moment, for the first time, the Zyvar knew fear. The Zyvar had always believed themselves to be the apex of warfare. Their strategies, their discipline, their technology, everything about their war machine was built on efficiency and control. But against humanity, control was an illusion. The battlefield had become a nightmare. Zyvar patrols vanished without a trace, their bodies never found. Their outposts were destroyed in the dead of night, not with the raw firepower they expected, but with precise, calculated strikes that left nothing but echoes of destruction. They found their own warriors crucified on the wreckage of their ships, bodies burned beyond recognition, messages carved into their armor in a language they could not understand but instinctively feared. Captain Adrian Cole watched from a concealed position as the Zyvar forces faltered. Their formations broke more easily now, their reactions slower. Fear was creeping into them, and fear made them weak. A whispered command over the comms. Engage. Like wraiths, human soldiers emerged from the dust. Blades cut through alien flesh before their victims could even scream. The Zyvar fired wildly into the darkness, their once precise coordination now fractured by paranoia. By the time reinforcements arrived, there was nothing left of the patrol but blood-stained sand. Far from the battlefield, in the grand halls of the United Earth Federation, voices were raised in alarm. Reports from the front lines spoke of atrocities, of tactics that no civilized race should ever employ. Ambassadors and politicians spoke in urgent tones about the morality of war, about the fine line between survival and monstrosity. President Nathaniel Hearst turned to General Alexander Kane, his expression troubled. "We are winning, but at what cost? Our soldiers are becoming something else out there. Something we may not recognize when this is over." Kane met his gaze without hesitation. "Mr. President, civilization will not save us. The only thing that will is victory." Elaine ever the diplomat, interjected. "There are other ways to win besides fear. We cannot become monsters in the name of survival." Kane's voice was cold as steel. "You still don't understand, do you? This war isn't about what we want to become. It's about whether or not we get to decide at all. The Zyvar did not come here to negotiate. They did not come here to conquer. They came here to erase us. And if we have to become nightmares to stop them, then so be it." The room fell into silence. No one had an answer to that. Because deep down, they knew he was right. The war had changed. What began as an invasion had become a desperate retreat. Zyvar forces, once unchallenged conquerors, were now scattered remnants fleeing before an enemy they had underestimated. The humans had evolved, not in the way the Zyvar expected, but in a manner that defied comprehension. The battlefields were no longer contested grounds, they were hunting grounds. Entire Zyvar battalions vanished overnight. Their warships, once symbols of dominance, were reduced to drifting wreckage, picked apart with ruthless efficiency. The psychological toll was undeniable. Zyvar warriors hesitated in their orders. Fear clouded their judgment. And for the first time in their history, they were losing. Inside the war chamber of the Zyvar High Command, Supreme Strategist Zylveth reviewed the latest intelligence reports with a growing sense of unease. The human counteroffensive had not been a matter of superior numbers or firepower. It had been something else entirely, something primal. Something terrifying. A holographic screen flickered to life before him. It was a transmission from the United Earth Federation. A simple message, but one that sent a chill through his exoskeletal frame. "Stop attacking or we stop pretending to be civilized." Silence gripped the chamber. The words were neither a plea nor a demand. They were a declaration. A statement of absolute certainty. The humans had been holding back. And now they were offering a final warning. Zylveth turned to his advisors, their expressions mirroring his own growing dread. "They were never weak," he whispered. "We simply never forced them to show their true nature." One of his generals, still defiant, hissed, "They are lesser beings. They cannot hope to." "Enough!" Zylveth snapped. "You have seen the reports. You have felt their wrath. This is no longer about victory. This is about survival." The room fell into uneasy silence. Zyvar had never once considered the possibility that they might lose a war. But this was no ordinary war. This was a lesson in hubris. Back on Earth, in the war chambers of the UEF, General Alexander Kane watched the transmission being sent. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. When a young officer hesitated, as if questioning whether such a threat was necessary, Kane spoke without looking away from the screen. They assumed we were prey. They assumed we could be dominated. Now they understand the truth. The officer swallowed hard. And if they don't heed the warning, sir? Kane finally turned, his eyes cold, unwavering. Then we stop pretending. The Galactic Council convened in solemn silence. The war between Earth and Zyvar had shaken the foundations of interstellar diplomacy. Once dismissed as insignificant, humanity now stood as a force to be reckoned with. Representatives from dozens of civilizations debated the implications, their voices hushed with something new fear. Across the chamber, Supreme Strategist Zylveth of the Zyvar sat rigid, his once proud demeanor replaced by quiet contemplation. He had witnessed firsthand what humanity was capable of. No longer were they a species of diplomats and dreamers. They had become something else entirely, something terrifyingly efficient at war. He listened as alien leaders spoke in cautious tones. "We must reconsider our stance on Earth," an elder from the Ixari Confederation murmured. "They are no longer the naive explorers we once believed them to be." "Naive," scoffed a reptilian envoy. "They were never naive. We simply mistook their restraint for weakness. That was our greatest mistake." A whisper rippled through the council chamber as a new voice entered the conversation. It came from the shadows, from a representative of a species that had remained neutral throughout the conflict, a species that rarely spoke at these meetings. The figure leaned forward, their voice barely above a whisper yet carrying the weight of an ancient warning. "Remember this well," they said. "Never make the mistake of attacking Earth again." The words lingered in the air long after they had been spoken. Far from the political chambers, in the cold abyss of space, a new monument to humanity's resilience stood vigilant. A massive UEF battle station, its armored hull a stark reminder of what had transpired. Carved into its reinforced plating, a simple message glowed under the distant light of the stars. "Peace is an option. But if not, we will be your final choice."